Imagine it is the year 1400. You are a peasant living in a small village in Western Europe. The harvest season has just ended. The winter cold is creeping through the floorboards, and you have a problem. It's not the threat of the local lord raising your taxes, nor is it the lingering fear of the Black Plague that devastated your parents' generation. No, your crisis is much smaller, yet infinitely more immediate. It is located in the upper left quadrant of your mouth. It started 3 days ago as a dull, pulsing throb whenever you bit down on your daily ration of hard, grit-filled rye bread. Yesterday, the pulse turned into a constant, white-hot spike of electricity that radiates upward into your eye socket and downward into your neck. Right now, at 2 in the morning, your jaw is swollen to the size of a turnip. Every time your heart beats, a wave of blinding, nauseating pain crashes through your skull. You cannot sleep, you cannot eat, you can barely breathe. In the modern world, this is a minor inconvenience. You open an app, book an appointment, sit in a sterile white room, breathe in some nitrous oxide, and let a licensed professional fix the issue with high-tech drills and localized anesthetics. But you do not live in the modern world. You live in 1400. And in the year 1400, there are no dentists. The word dentist doesn't even exist yet. So what exactly happens to you next? Over the next 12 minutes, we are going to walk step by step into the terrifying, bizarre, and shockingly dangerous reality of medieval dental crisis. Because in the Middle Ages, a simple cavity wasn't just a dental issue. It was a high-stakes gamble with disfigurement, agony, and quite literally, death. To understand why your upcoming treatment is going to be so horrific, we first have to understand what the people of 1400 actually believed was happening inside your mouth. If you were to ask the local village wise woman or even a learned physician from the university why your mouth was on fire, they would give you a definitive, globally accepted answer: the tooth worm. For thousands of years across ancient Babylonia, Egypt, China, and medieval Europe, humanity shared a collective medical consensus. They believed that dental cavities and toothaches were caused by a tiny parasitic worm that burrowed its way into the center of the tooth. Once inside, this worm would feast on the living tissue, thrashing around violently whenever it got hungry. Every time you felt a sharp stabbing flash of pain, that was the worm biting into your dental nerve. Think about how terrifying that psychological reality was for a medieval person. You didn't just have an infection, you had a literal living demon trapped inside your skull, eating you from the inside out. Now, to be fair to our ancestors, they weren't completely crazy for believing this. When a tooth finally rotted away or broke open, the exposed, stringy dental pulp inside actually looked exactly like a small, pale worm. Furthermore, their daily reality made tooth decay incredibly common, though not for the reasons you might think. We often assume medieval people had terrible teeth because they didn't have toothbrushes. In reality, skeletal remains show that medieval peasants often had fewer cavities than modern humans because their diets were completely free of refined sugar. However, they had a different enemy: grit. Because flour was ground using massive stone mills, microscopic particles of stone and dirt routinely wound up in their bread. Every single day, with every chew, these stone particles acted like sandpaper, wearing down the protective enamel of their teeth until the soft, vulnerable dentin inside was completely exposed to bacteria. Once that enamel was gone, decay was inevitable. And once the decay reached the nerve, the imaginary toothworm woke up. Before you resort to the absolute last option, which we will get to shortly, you try to cure the toothworm at home using traditional medieval pharmacology. Your first stop is the local village herbalist. She looks at your swollen face and prepares a fumigation therapy. This is the most popular method for dealing with toothworms in the 1400s. She takes the seeds of a plant called henbane, mixes them with yellow sulfur and wax, and throws them onto burning charcoal. She instructs you to lean over the rising, acrid smoke, open your mouth wide, and inhale the fumes directly into your open cavity. The goal here is to literally choke the toothworm to death with toxic smoke, forcing it to drop out of your tooth. Here's the crazy part. It actually seemed to work. After inhaling the smoke, patients would spit into a bowl of water, and looking down, they would see tiny white worm-like structures floating at the bottom. They believed these were the dead toothworms exiting their mouths. In reality, when henbane seeds burn, the heat causes the inner embryo of the seed to burst open and release small white thread-like fibers that look identical to tiny worms. It was a brilliant, accidental illusion that kept medieval medical malpractice alive for centuries. If the toxic smoke doesn't work, you move on to topicals. The medieval medical texts of 1400 are filled with recipes that sound like witchcraft, but were treated as cutting-edge science. You might be told to rub the fat of a breen frog directly onto the agonizing tooth, as the humors of the frog were believed to neutralize the heat of the infection. Or perhaps you would try a mixture of crushed garlic, vinegar, and honey smeared onto your gums. If you were wealthy enough to consult a formal physician, they might attempt a more aggressive tactic: cauterization. The physician would take a thin metal wire, heat it over hot coals until it glowed bright orange, and guide it directly into the open hole of your decaying tooth. The goal was to burn the toothworm alive. In practice, if they managed to hit the exact center of the tooth, they would completely incinerate the dental nerve. If successful, the pain would miraculously vanish instantly because the tooth was now dead. But if the doctor's hand slipped even a millimeter, they would inflict horrific third-degree burns across your tongue, cheeks, and gums, leaving you in far worse shape than before. Let's assume the henbane smoke failed, the frog fat did nothing, and you are too terrified of the red-hot iron. The sun is rising, your fever is breaking out, and the pain is now completely unendurable. You have run out of options. It is time to visit the only man in town who can truly end your misery. You walk into the village square. You aren't looking for a hospital or a clinic. They don't exist. You are looking for a shop with a red and white pole outside. This is the domain of the barber surgeon. In the year 1400, the medical world is strictly divided. At the top
are the university-educated physicians. They wear long robes, speak Latin, study the stars, and balance your bodily humors. They consider actual physical labor beneath them. They do not cut skin, and they certainly do not touch dirty, infected mouths. If you need something cut, drained, amputated, or pulled, you go to the barber. The same man who trims your beard, cuts your hair, and performs routine bloodletting is also the town's primary surgical specialist. You step inside his shop. The smell of stale sweat, cheap ale, and iron blood hangs heavy in the air. The barber looks at your swollen face, tells you to sit down on a low wooden stool, and unrolls a leather pouch containing his instruments of the trade. Take a good look at these tools. There are no delicate, silver-plated instruments here. These are heavy, blacksmith-forged implements made of raw iron. There is no anesthesia. There is no Novocaine. There is no numbing gel. If you are lucky, the barber might hand you a leather strap to bite down on, or perhaps he will pour a cup of cheap, sour wine down your throat to slightly dull your senses. But alcohol thins the blood, which makes the upcoming procedure significantly messier, so many barbers prefer you completely sober. The barber-surgeon steps up behind you. He wraps his massive calloused arms around your shoulders, pinning your arms to your sides and locking your head firmly against his chest. You are completely immobilized. The barber-surgeon steps forward. He wipes his bloody hands on his apron, tells you to open wide, and positions his heavy iron pelican over your infected molar. The iron cold of the tool presses down against your inflamed, agonizingly sensitive gums. The barber tightens the claw around the base of your tooth. He braces his foot against your wooden stool for leverage, and then he pulls. In the year 1400, extraction isn't a clean vertical pull. It is a violent, sideways, wrenching motion. The goal is to literally tear the periodontal ligaments holding the tooth to the bone. As the barber levers the tool, you hear a sickening, wet crunch sound echoing directly inside your skull. That isn't just the tooth breaking free. It is the sound of your alveolar jawbone fracturing under the sheer, unyielding pressure of the iron claw. A wave of pain so blindingly intense hits your brain that your vision flashes completely white. You try to scream, but the assistant's hands are clamped hard over your forehead, and your mouth is filled with blood and iron. If the tooth comes out in one whole piece, you are incredibly lucky. The barber will hold up the bloody, rotted molar with pride, show it to the room, and throw it into a bucket on the floor. But very often, things did not go smoothly. Because medieval teeth were frequently brittle and severely decayed, the immense pressure of the iron pliers would cause the top of the tooth to completely shatter into fragments, leaving the infected deep roots firmly trapped deep inside your fractured jawbone. If this happened, the barber didn't stop. He couldn't leave an open, broken root inside your mouth. He would pick up his dental elevator, that sharp iron spike, and begin aggressively digging and gouging directly into your raw, bleeding gums, trying to pry the remaining root fragments out like a nail from a piece of old wood. By the time he is finished, your mouth is a shredded, bleeding battlefield of exposed bone, torn tissue, and raw nerves. You are handed a cup of warm water mixed with salt or vinegar, told to rinse and spit, and sent on your way out into the muddy street. You walk home, spitting blood into the mud, believing the worst is finally behind you. The tooth worm is gone. The blinding nerve pain has subsided into a dull, heavy ache. But in reality, your true gamble with survival has only just begun. In 1400, humanity had absolutely no concept of the germ theory of disease. The barber surgeon did not wash his hands before putting them in your mouth. He certainly did not sterilize his iron tools between patients. The blood on his pliers from the man before you was simply wiped off on a dirty rag, if it was wiped off at all. By tearing your tooth out and fracturing your jawbone, the barber has created a massive, direct highway straight into your deep facial tissues and bloodstream. Over the next few days, you face a deadly three-way fork in the road. Historical records indicate that up until the introduction of modern antibiotics and sterile surgery, dental infections were consistently ranked among the leading causes of death in standard mortality tables. A simple, untreated cavity could easily become a death sentence if it mutated into a deep tissue infection. So, the next time you sit in a comfortable, adjustable dentist's chair, complaining about the annoying high-pitched whine of the drill or the mild discomfort of a cleaning needle, take a deep breath. Remember the year 1400. Remember the imaginary toothworm, the toxic henbane smoke, the red-hot iron wires, and the local barber surgeon waiting for you in his muddy workshop with a rusty iron claw. We live in a golden age of medicine, and our teeth have never been luckier.